Well, in late April and early May, when we planted our peanuts, we were gambling as to whether or not they would even produce or even grow because of our heavy soils. Well, they're come along pretty good in my opinion, but today we have the expert with us, Dr. Ron Sholar. And Ron, welcome to Oklahoma Gardening.
Glad to be here.
Ron is our extension agronomy or peanut specialist. And Ron, tell us, what do you think about our peanuts?
Your peanuts look surprisingly good, Steve. This is a pretty tight, pretty heavy soil here, but it's not atypical of a lot of Oklahoma garden soils. And I think your viewers should take heart that if we can grow peanuts here, they can grow them probably in the soils they have also.
And of course, we've had several years of putting organic matter in.
Right.
I think that's helped a little bit.
It looks like you've really improved your soil.
Well, Ron, let's go over here and talk a little bit about varieties. Now, when we planted these, we tell the viewers that it was an unnamed variety, but of the Valencia type. You've actually brought different examples for us to see. Tell us a little bit about some of these.
Okay, Steve. Well, let's start with the two types that are grown more by commercial growers in Oklahoma and the United States as well. The first of these would be the Spanish type, and you can see that these are a small potted variety, a short season variety, and that's one of the things that makes them very appealing. It has a very good taste. This is the runner type. There are a number of varieties within the Spanish type and then within the runner type. You can see that this is a larger pod than the Spanish type, and this is the most common commercial variety grown in the United States. Most of these are shelled and made into peanut butter.
Okay.
This is the Virginia type, commonly known as the ballpark type, and you can see that it has two large kernels per pod. We have an extra large one in here of another Virginia type. These are known as the ballpark peanuts, are usually sold salted and roasted in the shell. Very tasty and a very common treat in the fall of the year. And then this is the Valencia type, and these are the varieties, or this variety. This is the one that has 3 or more kernels per pod, and it also has the dark red skin, whereas the skins of the other varieties will be a lighter pink or tan. This is commonly known as the Tennessee red variety. Very, very popular with home gardeners and very tasty. And it'd certainly be my recommendation for those wanting to grow peanuts in their home garden that they go with the Valencia type.
Well, now come over here, Ron, and let's talk a little bit about how these grow. Tell us, what do we expect? Are they on time here as far as the growth? You know, I was telling you we actually have 2 different planting dates here, but they look the same. What happened under those circumstances?
Well, Steve, as you told me that part of these peanuts were planted back the last week of April, which we would consider very, very early. We still would expect to have some cool weather ahead of us at that time, and certainly that did occur. So your peanuts that were planted the last week of April are actually no further along than those planted on into May, and that's because of the cool, wet weather we had.
Okay.
Peanuts are a hot weather crop, and they're going to respond to heat.
Okay.
And poorly to cold.
Well, now tell us just how are we going to get peanuts out of these plants? What's going to happen here?
Peanuts are a really unique plant, a very interesting plant. It's one of the very few plants that actually blooms above ground, but makes its fruit below ground. We have a graphic up over here, and if you looked at that, you would see that in panel 1, you can see the bloom, and that bloom is going to occur in the early morning hours. It's going to be self-pollinated. In other words, we don't need bees to help us out with that. It's going to, by noon, be withered and fall off, and then in panel 2, you see that there is a small peg-like or needle-like projection coming out where that leaf, where the flower had been. Within about 5 to 7 days, that peg is going to be pulled by gravity down into the soil, and you can see that occurring here in panel 3. And then in panel 4, you can see where the peg has penetrated the soil, and the pod has formed on the tip of the peg. The seeds and the pod were actually on the tip of that peg all the time. That the pod will turn horizontal, and in about 2 to 3 weeks, the pod will be as large as it's ever going to be. But then it will take another 30 or 45 days for it to fill, for the seeds to grow to their maximum size.
Now, I've seen those along the stem here, and some of the stems are coming out over our row, And you tell me not to worry about those.
That's right. Mother Nature will take care of those. You can see that there are some pegs forming here well up on the plant, and they're turning purple, which means these probably aren't going to make it to the ground. But that's nothing to worry about because there's an adequate amount down here
right at the base,
of the plant.
Okay, so that'll get us enough production.
Right.
Now another thing, Ron, too, that you were telling me about, our soil tests show that we're pretty adequate in everything except nitrogen, and of course these are nitrogen producing plants. But what can we do during the summer to kind of boost the plants along and maybe help our soils out at the same time?
Well, if your soil for the garden has been built to a level that's adequate for your other crops, then it will also be adequate for peanuts, and very small amounts of nitrogen are needed. The one thing that's usually deficient in Oklahoma gardens is calcium. Peanuts require large amounts, and that can be solved by putting on some ag gypsum. It can be bought at local farm stores or garden centers, or some calcium of that nature.
And how would we do that? Just what, sprinkle it over?
Simply sprinkle it right over the row. We're just a little bit late on these because they are well into blooming. We'd like to begin that process at early bloom, but it's certainly not too late.
So we'll still get some benefit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that would put it right in the fruiting zone.
Any recommendation on the amount we'd put on?
Well, a gardener could break it down, but about 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet.
Okay,
would be
and then
adequate.
they just break that down in the rows.
Right.
Well, Ron, you've given us some good ideas. I guess there's some probably disease problems, maybe a few insects we should look for quickly.
Right. You see a little bit of leaf feeding here, but that's nothing to worry about. Peanuts are amazingly resilient to insects, and ordinarily we don't have to spray for insects. Diseases, and these are remarkably disease-free. We'd like to keep them that way. As the best way to do that is to rotate your garden spots and always keep fresh soil, and that will help keep disease problems down.
And the main thing we might see are leaf spots throughout the year.
Leaf spots would be a sign that their diseases are present, and these are disease-free right now.
Here's a couple of things you brought along. You might tell us, I guess those are available at the county extension office.
That's correct. We have a fact sheet called Peanuts in the Home Garden, and another publication called How Peanuts Are Grown, and these are available to your viewers.
Well, Ron, we're going to put some gypsum on, and we hope you'll come back. And when are we looking at for harvest?
These should take about 150 or 160 days from the time that they were planted to harvest, so sometime this fall we'll be looking forward to a good crop.
Well, we hope you'll come back and show us how to harvest them then.
Okay.
Thanks again,
Glad
Ron.
to do it.